As storytellers, we often spend so much time trying to build an audience that we neglect to build a community. And there's a big difference between people watching your work and people that are nourished by it and regenerated by it and moved and inspired by it and understood by it and, most importantly, connected by it. Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where filmmaking, brand, and business all collide. My name is Bennett, a filmmaker and an author, and for over 2 decades, I've studied how stories actually work on the screen, inside organizations, and most importantly, out in the real world. So each episode, I host one of the world's greatest storytellers to help break down the art and science of storytelling as a system, not just a skill. That means how stories create connection, how they move people emotionally, and ultimately, how they drive action. So if you want to learn to tell stories that do more than just sound good, but they actually achieve something, then this, dear storyteller, is the show for you. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. Today, my guest is Jon Bregel, and Jon is a cinematographer. He's a filmmaker. He founded the New York City production company Variable, which is very successful. But what made me invite him on the show was a major pivot that he had in his career when he was experiencing severe burnout. And that's something that a lot of us artists and creators and storytellers face at some point in our careers. So he sought out therapy, he sought out coaching, he became a life and career coach, and now he has created a mental wellness community for filmmakers called the Nourish Community. That is something I've never heard of before. It is something I, like many filmmakers I know, desperately need. And here's the thing, it doesn't just apply, my background is in filmmaking, but it does not just apply to filmmakers. All creators, I say this so often on the show and in my workshops, it is so hard to take something that only exists in your head and make it a thing that exists in reality out in the world. It's extremely hard, right? And creators and artists and storytellers and writers and filmmakers and musicians, they all face burnout from 2 different directions or paths, if you will. One of them is just the stress in trying to do what I just said. Create something that only exists in your mind while trying to make money and pay your bills and make a living and feed your kids if you have them or your family. It's extremely hard to do that. Or you start getting a lot of work and you start seeing success and you fear losing it. This is what happened in Jon's case. And therefore you accept every job that comes along. You say, yes, 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 yes. And before you know it, you've got 1,000 plates spinning in the air. And before you know it, they're all going to come crashing down. This is something that not enough people talk about, specifically to this community. So whether you're a filmmaker like me, or a marketer, or a brand storyteller, or a writer, or whatever, you face the potential to experience this burnout as well. So having a community, not just an audience of supporters, but a real community that shares their wins and losses and their trials and errors and the things that have given them some sort of success, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, is so important. I love that he created that. Now, I found Jon through the movie Baltimoreans with Michael Strassner. Jay Duplass directed it. I can't sing the praises of that movie enough. It's a great Christmas dark comedy. It came out last year, and he was the cinematographer for that. So at some point, he hosted Michael Strassner on to talk about how we kind of heal our trauma through our art, which is what Michael did when he wrote this story, The Baltimoreans. And so I really started looking deeper into this community. I became a part of this community, and I just think it's a topic that we can't talk about enough. Mental health and art. Where they overlap, where they intersect, how we navigate that, and the harsh reality that it is embedded in almost all artists' journeys. I say here on the show so often that almost every episode comes back to the story that we tell ourselves. This is the crux of this whole conversation. How do you, as a creator of any type, move forward consistently and in a healthy manner while trying to create the beautiful things that exist inside your soul when you're trying to put them out to the world? So here's my conversation with Jon Bregel, and I hope that you love it. Jon, welcome to the Storytelling Lab.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. I am stoked for this conversation because we always, we always end up talking about the story that we tell ourselves here on the show. It doesn't matter if we're talking about marketing or brand storytelling or social media or filmmaking or whatever. It always kind of comes back to what's going on up here. So with what you've built and your career, I'm excited to have the opportunity to kind of like pick it apart a little bit and find out how you landed where you did. But let's establish some foundation for the folks listening. The way we met was through your community you created, the Nourish Community.
Right.
So tell me exactly, and for those listening, what that is.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the way we talk about it is that it's a community for filmmakers in pursuit of wellness, meaningful relationships, and purpose. And the common denominator for most of us filmmakers is just a lack of wellness in the context of our careers as filmmakers for lots of reasons we'll probably get into. But that's sort of the silver lining of the community is that we're all there for this shared purpose. And,
yes.
Yeah.
That was what attracted to me to the work that you're doing and made me want to have you on the show because, as I told you a moment ago before we started recording, like as soon as I saw even just as you explained it now, but as soon as I saw that, probably on the Instagram feed, I was just like, oh, that's a place for me. I feel exactly like that. Like, I mean, like you said, we'll get into it, but there's just something about this creative journey. I've said this a lot too, where it's like to take something that exists only here in your head and make it into a real thing that people can enjoy is so extremely challenging and hard. And I think we as creatives don't really analyze the impact that trying to do that has on us. So I felt very seen, heard, and understood when I saw that. And I don't know that there's another community out there. There might be, but I immediately recognize the importance of it for folks like you and I. So now let's get into the why. What was the catalyst for you to create the Nourish Community, a community of wellness for filmmakers specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely directly inspired by my own experience as a filmmaker. Absolutely. I spent 10 years living in New York City from age 20 to 30 and had a lot of success in the film industry and the commercial industry specifically. But through that process, it was just constant challenges with mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, all of it. And there wasn't necessarily a space that I was aware of to talk about these things openly, let alone, I don't know if I had the willingness to externalize any of that stuff at that point in time. I think my mindset was just, you just have to stay strong and muscle up. And if you express any of this type of weakness or struggle, then you're cast out. You're not going to make it. And so the community has been just like a really beautiful place to open up and share with a lot of other industry professionals. There's people that have just getting started, and then there's people that have been in it for 30, 40 years, and it's just a great space to come up and sort of support one another in this career path that we've chosen for ourselves.
Yeah, it's also really hard, and I think creates that feeling of like push forward because it's project based. So it's not I don't want to say not reliable or sustainable, but if you aren't pushing it forward like that with that intensity, you can't just do a project a year. I mean, unless it's a really big project. But even still, like you can't start a project, stop it, and then try to start another one. So your slate is going to, those projects are going to overlap quite a bit.
Sure.
And so I think that the feeling is, and it is based in reality, I would argue, that like if you aren't pushing that hard, then it's going to be really hard to create a sustainable career that way and not just be kind of like a hobbyist or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of us who want to make this our thing,
sure,
that's the feeling. When pre-launching the community, kind of feeling those reasons why you did create the community later on, what was the self-talk going on in the back of your head? So you're having a successful career and company in New York, you're producing great work, you're feeling that feeling of like, continuing to push the rock up a hill. But what's the other side of your mind telling you? What are you feeling that's got you It's got you realizing that there's some cracks in the foundation.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot of tension that exists because there's this thing that I love to do more than anything, which is make films with my friends. But then there's this eroding mental, emotional, spiritual health on the other side. And it's like this constant battle of, how do I keep doing the thing that I love while feeling like a whole human being? And that was a challenge for me. I'd say from the time I was about 25 to 30, it was a constant battle for me to kind of hold on to this career and this identity as a filmmaker while this deeper part of myself was screaming for me to pay attention to it. But I just kept avoiding the flags and the signs to the point where my business partner at the time basically told me, look, if you don't get a therapist or a life coach, I can't be your business partner anymore. And that was the first big aha moment of like, whoa, I've really gotten away from myself. The fact that my business partner is giving me this ultimatum. And thankfully, I took his advice. I got a life coach, and that was the first step in me kind of developing a deeper self-awareness and setting some boundaries for myself and learning what my values are. And from there, I just developed a little bit more awareness of what I was feeling for all those years, so I could at least put my finger on it.
Yeah.
And since then, I'm 37 now, and so it's been many years of building awareness, and it continues to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Because filmmaking it's such a glamorous industry. It's something I think so many of us have looked up to, this idea of being directors or DPs or producers or whatever. And there's a lot that's within that title that I think a lot of us hold on to. And I know that was a challenge for me for many, many years, is unwillingness to let go of this idea that, I'm a business owner, I'm a director, and what was that actually costing me? A lot. So
and that's a really good point. And like what it means to be a filmmaker, I think
right.
Us subscribing to some definition that may or may not be true, or may not be true for us specifically. Like there's a million different ways to be a filmmaker. Yes. I had a friend who was kind of like serving as a coach and mentor that explained that to me, because I was like, but I want to be a filmmaker. And he's like, you are, like, you're doing it. Yeah. People are paying you money to go create films for them. You're a filmmaker. And I was like, oh, because I had this like, probably the same idea that a lot of us have, like, no, I want to be Scorsese, And it's like, that's not the only path.
Sure.
And I think also what you said that's important when we talk about, I had this conversation with my own therapist. It's like, the challenges don't stop. What the whole point is to develop tools to, face those challenges. But it is not this like curable thing where like, I'm going to get in touch with my, inner self and do some therapy and, I've fixed the challenges that, exist in my line of work or just in being a human,
Totally.
So I think that's important to reinforce for folks that it's a system. It's a system of practices and rituals and tools and habits, not, I fixed that thing. Now let's go back to the grind.
I have a pretty funny, I don't know if funny is the right word, but a story about that where, I think I was 27 and I took a 2-month sabbatical. That was like a really long time in the making. And this was when I still had my company. And I actually believed that I was healed after I got back from the sabbatical. Like I actually believed for about a week that everything was okay. And then I went directly into a job. It was a 4-city car commercial, and it annihilated me. And I was more depressed and more burned out than before the sabbatical. And that was the first time where I realized, oh my gosh, like there's something really, really deep here. And that's where I started to get really serious about, wellness, mindfulness, and all these things.
Dude, like it's so true. The retreat ain't gonna do it for you. They're good. Like it's good. A reset is totally good. So please hear me, folks. I'm not dogging that at all. I've done several of them, but the like hopes that I had for these little, like, let's say writing retreats, like, I'm going to come out of it with the whole screenplay, and it's just like, no, the only thing that has ever gotten me to move the ball forward and actually reach the finish line is like daily work. Right. And it doesn't have to be 8 hours a day. I mean, just something,
Yes.
every day. Going away for a week or a weekend or whatever, thinking that I'm going to be transformed, nothing happens. Nothing happens. So I think it's good for just a catching your breath. I
Yeah.
do absolutely think like just getting off the grid. I like to go to like, you know, the river or a cabin or something, but it is not going to solve all the problems. That's such a good point to illustrate. It's just, I think that's a moment to kind of just like catch your breath.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, tap in a little bit, but it really comes back to like being able to do it every day and access those tools, you know, every day. I want to go back just a little bit about the life coaching thing, because this is I suspect, and this is an assumption, I could be way off, but I know there is some pushback to that, the idea, the concept of a life coach, mostly probably because people don't know what it means and what it does. So I want to like, that's where I'm going with this. I want to clarify that.
Yeah.
I wonder if in our space specifically, and let's just zoom out to like creatives.
Sure.
If that, I think, I wonder if there is some resistance to that with creatives, or if the people who seek out life coaches are more like entrepreneurial, like business folk. I don't know. But I do know that often people are like, what does that mean? What does a life coach actually do? Or they might think that's just some woo-woo stuff that's just like, that's not going to help. So through your journey with that, like what exactly did that provide for you to have someone look at your life and be able to kind of like coach you forward with it?
Yeah. Yeah. In many ways, it was a non-judgmental mirror that required, you know, the coach to be a deep listener. And in return, I could see myself clearly, and that would lead to personal growth. And I could actually see what I wanted as a reflection of what I am telling this person and then what they're reflecting back to me. And yeah, I think non-judgment is the biggest piece of it, coming into a space and being able to be vulnerable and honest and just having someone listen to you and reflecting back to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether it's a life coach, therapist, both, whomever, I think having that objective party that, like you say, that non-judgmental is such a good word, party can really help you see the overall picture. I talk about that a lot actually on the show, of like when you're in the story, when you're the character in your story, like you're tunnel vision, right? You're kind of like blinded by what's you don't see that, you're not looking at it from the top down, right? It's like I always equate it to like a garden maze, right? You got these big tall towers above you and you can't see where you're going. So you take a left turn, you run into a dead end, you might revisit where you were. But if you can have that ability, and it usually takes the help of some sort of mentor to zoom out to that like 30,000 foot view, that bird's eye view, and look at it objectively, then you're able to see the whole journey. You're able to understand like obstacles are going to come that way. It's just really hard to do that when you're in the trenches. So I think having that non-judgmental party is paramount in being able to see your story more objectively. Is that fair?
Totally. I mean, the other thing I left out that is integral to the coaching process as I've been trained and as I've been coached is to work through a deeper awareness and practice of your core values. Because that's really the only way that I can serve anyone and that I've been served, is if I understand who they are on a deeper level. And then we use those values as a compass to make aligned decisions through the process. So, you know, I'm not burning out in the process because my coach is constantly holding me accountable to who I am. And that's been life-changing for me. I mean, in the first coach I worked with, that was the deepest takeaway that I got out of it, that I wasn't even expecting.
Yeah.
Was a compass in which to navigate my life and my most difficult decisions.
This is so, oh man, this is this is exciting. I spent a lot of time talking with brands about this exact thing, but I think as individuals, we often overlook or neglect it, of like, no, how do I treat myself as a business or the product, right? And tap into like, well, yeah, but why am I here? You know, what stories am I, you know, pushed to help tell? And it creates a question in my mind for filmmakers specifically. Again, we can just say artists, but I know filmmakers well, and I am one. So oftentimes it's like, we need the work. We just want to create, and we'll take on whatever work there is. Wh- why is it so important, and what does it look like when we do this work to establish, like, no, what are my core values? How do I want to show up in the film space?
Sure.
Because I think there's this thing that, I don't want to say crab in a bucket, but it's like, projects are sometimes few and far between. So you're pushed to the same thing we talked about earlier, to grab what you can when it's available. If a job comes across and it's like, hey, we'd like to hire you to create a film for a company, it's really hard to say no to that.
Right.
And sometimes that's the biggest problem, is like we've said yes to too many things. So walk me through the process of, like, as an individual filmmaker trying to make this as a career, what does that core value work do in terms of, like, executing on it?
Sure. Well, I think top line, I'll just kind of define it as I understand it, is that core values are these fundamental beliefs and guiding behaviors that shape an individual's behavior. That's how I've come to understand it myself. And so if I'm living a life in alignment to my values, which my values are faith and presence, for example. So if I'm making every decision through the barometer of presence, then immediately I can discern whether I can be present in this opportunity that I'm going to take on, or whether I can't be present. So it requires a deep state of discernment. And I think that deep state of reflection is challenging in the context of a career that is largely based on reactivity. And so a lot of what I'm doing in coaching, and a lot of what it's about, you don't need to have a coach to know your values and to work through your values. The reason it's effective is because there's accountability there. And but to slow down and to be honest with yourself and to say, this is who I am. These are the values that are guiding my best decisions in my life, my peak experiences, whatever those may be, does require just some time to slow down and be honest with yourself. And that's not easy to do, because a lot of times making decisions on the betterment of your true self and who you are might result in less income, might result in a career pivot, might result in scary changes. And the quote that really still sticks with me to this day that my first coach taught me was that when you live in alignment with your values, you cause yourself as little suffering as possible in the long term. And that one just always sticks to mind, because it's really challenging in the short term. But if you have faith in your values and who you are and how you want to show up in the world, then ultimately you're creating a path that's going to serve you for the long term. So I don't know if that answers your question. I could talk about this values stuff all day, because it's given me life in so many ways.
No, I think it's important, and it is something I land on a lot with the brands that I work with, of, like, understanding, how you show up and do the work that you do differently than others in your space. And if that's not clear, to me, that's a problem. Whether, I use that in the filmmaking terms. I use this this expression a lot of, like, if we were given the same amount of money and the same topic and the same resources, et cetera, to go make a film about whatever, and there were 100 of us, with those same resources, there should be 100 different films, because we all come from different backgrounds and experiences. We have different perspectives on the world. We have different interests, and obviously core values as well too. And often what happens, whether it's a personal, a creative or a brand, is we're looking at what else is going on around us, those that are in our space, and we're like, oh, should I be doing that? Like, oh, that's cool. Like, for me personally, like, I was doing music videos when I was just starting off, and then it just finally, the light bulb went off. I was like, I love music videos, but, like, this isn't what I want to be doing. And I'm not, like, I see other people in my space, friends of mine, that are like, they were put on this earth to create amazing visuals in that medium. Like, this is, their lane. I'm like, I love them, but, like, that's not exactly where I want to spend my time. Yeah. And it's hard when you're creative, because there's, there is that little bit of competitive aspect or judgment, to use your word. So I think it is really important to understand, what you're supposed to be working on, and how someone said, I forget who this was, it's pretty common, like, being different is better than being better. Understanding, like, this is a story that is fully aligned with who I am, or the old cliche of, like, what's a story that only you could tell?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
When did you, after your experience with coaching as a recipient, make the decision of like, I actually want to take on this role myself and like go get certified in coaching yourself?
So I did the life coaching first. I'd never done therapy before either, but actually,
Okay.
if I was honest with myself, what I needed more at that time was therapy.
Hmm.
And my life coach actually encouraged me to get a therapist, which was a really mature move on her behalf, because there's a
Totally
lot of
agree.
life coaches that try and act like therapists, and that is wrong. And I could go on and on
No,
about
I
that.
appreciate you mentioning it. That's a very fair point.
Yeah, so I got a therapist as well in that time, and between the life coach and the therapist, and then I continued to go on this whole like mental health journey, and there was other coaches and other things that I was investing in over the course of the next few years. But I just experienced so much growth through the coaching in particular, because it was outcome based. We would set a goal at the beginning of an area that I wanted to grow in, and then there was accountability through the process towards my goals in alignment with my values every time. And I just experienced so much growth and alignment with what felt right inside. And I continued to do therapy for years, but that was more just going in and like flushing out my inner world, and I was more reflective on my past and trying to make sense of certain decisions that I'd made. But the coaching, I felt like, wow, I'm moving in a direction that feels right. And
Hmm.
so to answer your question, it was when I was leaving my production company that I'd built in New York City with a partner, and I'd been doing that for, it was like 7 or 8 years, and that was all I really knew. And and when I was leaving that company, all of a sudden I had all this time in the world. You know, I had a bit of a buyout from my partner. I was living in China. I had all this free time, and I started to feel kind of a lack of purpose, because no longer I had a team around me every day. I realized I was kind of taking that for granted for years, because it's just what I knew. And all of a sudden I'm on my own. I'm with, my girlfriend at the time in China. And I had filmmakers reaching out to me for advice, which is something that happened a lot when I was a partner in the business. I just rarely had time to
Yeah.
actually be present with them
Oh.
in the way that I wanted to. And so now I had all this free time. I still had filmmakers reaching out to me, and I started to feel a great sense of purpose by just being able to like get on calls with them, answer their questions, and just showing up more fully. And so that gradually, a light bulb moment happened, and I was like, oh wow, like I'm basically coaching these filmmakers, and I don't have a job and I'm enjoying doing this. So could this actually be something that I'm doing, as like a side hustle or something like that? And slowly but surely, I've been doing it for 8 years now. It just became a full-time thing over the years. While I was doing filmmaking on the side, I would, in slower seasons, I would do coaching, or I'd be working with like one or two clients on the side in a busy season. And it's just been like a very meaningful way to engage with filmmakers that just continues to give me life. So I've just continued to do it.
Was creating the community like a natural extension of that one-on-one work? And when did it pop in your head of like, you know what, I'm doing this a lot, seeming to be effective. Let's make this something bigger.
Yeah, definitely. It was a means to try and connect a lot of people that I had been coaching over the years. That was the initial instinct, because I was constantly trying to connect people behind the scenes and, form like Google groups or whatever it was, just kind of hack
Hmm.
together things. And so ultimately, yeah, it was a way to like bring together people that I had worked with. And then clearly there's a bigger need and a bigger interest as well. And so just turned it into something that was a little bit more like kind of membership based. But but yeah, very much came out of a need to connect with other filmmakers that had similar challenges and struggles that I did myself. So
How important is that? I'm going to use myself as a, as a and as an example of a coaching client right now. I actually just had you
sure.
on the show so that I could get free coaching. Um,
Perfect.
so my question is, I'll go ahead and jump to that, is like, how important is community, the aspect of community? But
Yeah.
I want to use myself as an example, and this is completely transparent and honest, like what I struggle with most, and I think that this is shared by some filmmakers or creatives, is like where you see me now is my home office.
Sure.
I do a lot of the work in the lab, so to speak, not the
Right.
storytelling lab, but just like, I'm editing a feature right now. I do the podcast. Unless I'm on set, which has been a while, I don't get that community feel. And when I first moved to Durham, I was working downtown at like a co-working space.
Yeah.
And it was so good just seeing people, on a daily basis. And some of those would turn into working relationships. Like, oh, a friend of mine needs some video work done, and just naturally, networking and connecting. And so it's such a collaborative medium. And we know, I've got off to the side here, I've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We know that, community and belonging is very, very important to the human experience. And so it really became painfully obvious to me recently, like, this is not helpful. You have to find a way to like make this happen, because, it's very challenging to face this alone. And I, for one, and maybe others in our space, have that feeling a lot when you're kind of like, I spent last year writing screenplays, just trying to transition from documentary to narrative storytelling and working on that habit. But again, that's all done here in the dungeon, right? In the lab. And so it's not out there. So how important is it for people through the Nourish community or any community to seek out that connection with other creators, other potential collaborators?
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly talk about it from just like a knowledge base of like what I've read in books and everything. But for me, it's all just been personal experience and necessity.
Yeah.
I had a community growing up. I was always surrounded by friends, and that gave me so much life. And then I went to film school and I was surrounded by a community making films together. Then I went to New York City and I had a community of filmmakers around me, and we started a company together, and there was a group of us. And then when I left that company, I was shocked at what I experienced, because all of a sudden I was on my own and then in another country. And then I moved back home to Baltimore, which my parents were here, and I, bought a home in the city, but I didn't have a community outside of that. And it was just shocking to me, like how alone I felt and how much I took for granted what I had earlier in my life. So it was just kind of course correcting, a light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, I don't have community anymore. What can I do to build community, to find that feeling of connection and of shared growth? And so I very quickly pivoted when I was back in Baltimore, and just found ways to connect with local small businesses, and started like a personal project that involved doing a lot of photography and storytelling for like local businesses, and found a lot of community there. Then I had a church community in Baltimore City, which was really great. And then slowly but surely, I guess then like the Nourish community arose out of that. And it was a lot of just like light bulb moments of like, I had so much connection and so much growth when I was around people like my whole life, and it was fun and it was energizing. But when I was on my own, and also on my own as a freelancer, I left that out. When I left my company, I was still freelancing, but I was hopping around as like a rostered director or like a freelance cinematographer. And I felt a huge lack of community in that. And that's one of the reasons I pumped the brakes big time in my freelance career, is because there wasn't like a deeper felt sense of community that I experienced in that work. It was great to kind of like hop over here and make a few $1,000s, hop over there, whatever. But like that ground that was beneath me for so many years in the filmmaking context was no longer there. And it just started to feel meaningless for me. I lost the joy of doing it. And so out of all these different experiences in my life, I've just realized, I need community and different types of community. I don't just have filmmaking community. I have different types of community here. There's probably 4 different communities that I'm involved with in some way or another. Yeah. And, filmmaking is certainly the passion, but that's not what gives me the kind of emotional, spiritual stability on a daily basis.
That's a really good point to mention too. it's not just the people that do what we do.
Right.
Right. Like I play soccer. And so my soccer community is like absolutely just as profoundly impactful on, my mental health and well-being, and just fun, like just to
Yeah.
go tap in a couple times a week and kick around. Movement is always good as well. I think that's an important point to make, is that it's not just people who do what we do. That is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, multiple kinds of communities. Absolutely.
Yep.
We've talked a lot about the why behind the Nourish community. Let's talk a little bit about the what. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for those listening, if they might be interested, what exactly do you provide? What does that look like if I were to become a member?
Yeah, for sure. So the community's very much been like a 3-year, 4-year experiment at this point in time.
Mhm.
Launching it initially was like, how do we make a Alcoholics Anonymous for filmmakers? It's like, how do we create a space where people come together and they're okay to talk about challenges and areas that they want to grow, etc. And I'd say in many ways it's still very much an experiment, and probably will continue to be for some years. But that said, it's largely conversation based in Zoom calls.
Hmm.
We try and have anywhere from like 1 to sometimes there's like 4 calls a week in the community, sometimes less. But it's a way to come together, and usually the conversations are on specific themes, whether it could be, overcoming imposter syndrome, or it could be simply talking about philosophy of networking and how to think about it. It could be something about uncovering your purpose or the inner work of storytelling. These are all things that are kind of like the inner part of being a filmmaker, this kind of like deeper and quieter part that isn't as sexy as like learning these lenses or learning this trick, which I think, is what makes it a pretty unique place, because the people that come there are definitely a bit more in touch with their inner life, I find. And so a lot of the conversations that we have revolve in that space. It's very like reflective and contemplative, I would say. People that are like willing to just open up and share their personal stories. And often what you'll find is people on the call being like, oh, wow, like I feel that way too. Thanks for sharing that. Like that really
Absolutely.
resonates. And so it's a series of these conversations, and then it's just like a community, like similar to like a Facebook or something like that, where there's like
Yeah.
a feed and different content that comes out. But largely it's conversational based, and I think that's just the best way to connect with people, make as real of relationships as you can over the internet, I would say.
You had mentioned the inner work of storytelling, and I think it was, when I found you in the Nourish community, it was through Michael Strasser and the Baltimoreans,
Right.
at the end of last year, and you had Michael on to have a conversation that was, I forget the exact title, but basically like how to navigate trauma or process, in your storytelling or your
Mhm.
filmmaking or something like that. So the question is, how can storytellers, or how can one use storytelling to kind of work through some of those personal issues or some of that trauma or some of that pain that we might have experienced?
Totally. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, and I think everyone has a bit of a different way. I could tell you the way that it's brought a lot of healing and clarity in my own life.
Please.
And that's been largely over the last few years, really learning that filmmaking is a tool for pretty radical self-transformation. And I never really used to see it that way when I got into it. It was just a way to make things for fun and learn and grow. But as I've sort of connected the dots backwards from where I am now, I can very much see this tool being filmmaking teaching me things every step of the way. Every film that I've made is like another, point in my life to reflect back on and say, wow, what was I thinking in that point in my life? And ultimately leading me up to today, where I feel like if I'm going to make a film, I'm going to have to really feel convicted that this film is worth making, and I'm going to personally grow in the process, or it's going to offer something to someone else in the process. And the way that that's done for me is through storytelling. but it doesn't have to be necessarily like a conventional documentary or narrative story. It could be like a motion poem or something, like expressing some type of like real visceral feeling. But when I think about your question, for me, it's how I process difficult feelings, and I want to choose topics or stories that I can see myself in, even if they're very different and radically different than what I've experienced. I can at least connect with them through some element of my own story, and then walk through it and transform myself through the process of making the film, through the connection with the people and how the story's told, and then come out the other side just being like, wow, that was a hell of a journey. And that's been like a really healthy way for me to make films the last few years, because it takes a lot of emphasis off the end result and puts it more in what's in front of me, what I'm learning in the process, how I'm growing as a human in the process. And naturally what comes through is a story. Like through that process of learning and through that process of understanding, there's always, from my experience, a story on the other side. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. A lot of filmmakers and storytellers and I'm totally generalizing here. Well, you still have to make money, right? You still have to pay the bills. And even if you do, or when you do this work that we're talking about of aligning with your core values and having that show up in the work that you do and the work that you accept and pursue, et cetera, there is often still, like, we still have projects we want to do just for quote unquote fun, or like because our heart calls us to do it. That's not necessarily a paying job. And you often hear the like one for them, one for me, like one to pay the bills and then one to just, to be creative. How do you approach that when you do this work we'll just say professional projects and personal projects? Or are the projects that you accept only ones that align with your values, or do you still have space for ones that are just, I don't want to say transactional, like it's a negative, word, but just like, okay, I support this brand, I want to do this project, and then I also have my personal projects? Or is it only stuff that like lights your heart on fire?
For me right now, I have taken, it's been about a year and a half since I've taken on any freelance opportunities, because I'm coaching full time. And what I found was that I was just no longer able to tolerate the jobs that were not aligned with me. There's a phrase that this Quaker author has called, "Is your soul aligned with your role?" And no longer was my soul aligned with my role as a freelance cinematographer at that season in my life. And I want to be clear, like, I'm never speaking about things permanently, because I believe, we change, and there might be a season where as a matter of fact, I'm getting really excited and passionate about getting back into some freelance directing stuff right now. But it's been a year and a half of really doing a lot of this more spiritually aligned kind of coaching work and community building that's given me the space to feel safe to go back in those environments. And so for me, it has very much to do with where you are in the here and now, and how much can you tolerate. And if you can just no longer tolerate mental and emotionally what you're doing, then it's probably time to consider switching your role for at least a season. And that might mean getting a job at a food store, or getting a job, whatever, doing something that's going to decrease the mental and emotional burden that your work is putting on you and your family. And that's the thing a lot of us aren't willing to do, because it's so hard to get to where we are in this filmmaking career, that the idea of taking 6 months or a year off to do something different, to get a quote unquote normal job, just seems unfathomable. And I just see this over and over and over again, the repercussions of not listening to what your heart is telling you to do. And it can get really bad, really bad.
Dude.
So, yeah.
Well, I just got my money's worth for the free coaching that I stole today. with that one answer, my friend. Dude, that is so important. I feel like I've said this 5 or 6 times today. Like, good point, John. That's why I had you on the show. The looking at this through the lens of seasons is so crucial. I'm so glad that you said that. And dude, what is that if not storytelling, right?
Right.
And we do this to ourselves, that if we aren't constantly climbing, then we're failing. That's at least the what we're saying to ourselves in our heads. Lots of us. I certainly have feel like that. I don't even say felt like that. I feel like that. But what is a story? Like, think about Act 2 of any story. It's nothing but trials and errors and ups and downs. I mean, that is the point. That's what makes the story exciting, is like, and so look, and I don't even think it's fair to say taking a job to relieve some financial stress is a down part. It's just another scene in the story. Totally. And there has to be this ebb and flow. I mean, no story is just constant rise like that. And we don't treat our own story in the same manner. And that's a real problem. It's like, this is just a season and everything is in flux. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is finite. And I don't think that we talk about that enough. It's like, it is perfectly fine. It's not even we often look at it as like, I've taken a step backwards and now I can't get forward, or it's going to be harder. And it's just like, it's not linear like that. Right.
Yeah, I very much see it as inner growth and outer growth is how I tend to think of it. Like, for example, 3 weeks ago, I had a day, I think it was a Thursday, and I was just exhausted for whatever reason it was. I don't know what, but I was kind of beating myself up a little bit at the beginning of the day because I had these things that I wanted to get done. And then I called my friend Paige, she's one of my best friends, and we're kind of each other's like pseudo therapists, as friends are.
That's nice.
And just came to the conclusion on the call that, like, just taking a day off just for yourself is a different type of growth. It's an inner growth versus the outer growth of climbing the to-do list and the task list. And for whatever reason in that moment, I was just like, okay, I can really live with that because I believe it. I know it, that my soul just needs a chance to like calm down and catch up with the pace of life. And that is, if I don't know what growth is, I mean, that to me that's more growth than the external growth at this point in my life.
Absolutely. And it's not even like metaphoric. Like, that is how growth happens. Let's look at it through the lens of like building muscle, right? If we're thinking about exercise or fitness. Yes, you have to do the strength, the loaded work and the strain. But the muscle grows from the rest, from the regeneration. Like when you go back and you take rest days and then you eat properly to fuel those muscles. Because you literally, I don't want to digress too much, but you tear muscles. That's how they get built. You tear them. The repairing is how they grow back stronger. Literally, this is science, right?
Yeah.
And I think we don't give enough space to that rest. Think about writing a screenplay. I've talked about that already. Where you write, get that vomit draft done or whatever you want to call it. And then that week or so off is just as important to like separate yourself and get out of that tunnel vision of the maze we talked about earlier too. Yeah. But it's not even just sometimes you need this to balance. Like, I think it's actually a part of the equation that equals growth.
Yeah.
But again, we don't do that to ourselves. We're like, no, if it's not constant progress, then it's not growth. And we're so wrong about it. Yeah, dude, we got to give ourselves some grace.
Oh yeah.
And understand that those moments of breath are so important. Dude, think about, I'm sorry, I'm now getting like excited and nerding out, but like, think about a movie, right? You can't keep the pace just, you have to. I had an editor 20 years ago tell me this line, and it's never escaped me. It's like, sometimes you just need to let it breathe.
Yeah.
And think about those moments where you've had these high tension moments, and then you just have a scene where it's just like, oh, this just like reset the tone a little bit or the pace. Like, those are equally as important to driving it forward. Again, you can't just foot on the gas the whole time. Yes. So yeah, I mean,
that's basically the origin story of Nourish in a nutshell. Was like, I had my foot on the gas for like 8 years. There was no pausing. There was no perspective. It was just go, 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 climb the ladder, and then just boom, terrible burnout, terrible depression. And that was kind of the impetus for a lot of what I do today.
I get it, man. So you've built the community. You spent a lot of time the past year and a half or so focusing on coaching clients. You said you're starting to get excited about perhaps freelance directing again. When you forecast into the future, whether, we're here in the beginning of 2026, the next year or two, where is your focus going? Are you planting yourself and doubling down on the community? Do you see a potential pivot in the next year or two, or where's your time and energy going when you look forward?
So right now I'm in the process of building Nourish into more of like a coaching and community brand. So there's going to
Mhm.
be a roster of coaches that are experts in different areas,
Nice.
and that's what I've been working really hard on for the last, I'm going to say 6 months. And so probably late spring that'll be announced. And there's some developments on the community side of things that turn it more into like a practical tool that integrate a lot of whether if it's networking components, different tools that you can work through that we do a lot of times on Zoom calls, but you'll be able to access using like AI insights and things like that, to task management, to like wellness check-ins and things like that. That makes it feel to me more of something that people would show up for, because you can really
Yeah.
check in with yourself on the go, which I'm really excited about. So I've got a good friend who's developing that. And then my North Star really has been to move to China and spend a lot of time to China with my wife's family.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm hoping, anywhere from like 6 to 8 months from now, I can be living in China and working remotely and just like integrating with her family over there. It's been really challenging to get over there with a lot of things we've had going on the last few years. So
I
we've really
bet.
missed being there. So
Oh,
a part of my motivation with the business is to allow me to have
yeah.
flexibility from where I can work, so I'm not constantly pulled away from the things that like really matter most to me. So that's guiding a lot of my decisions right now.
I love that. I think that's a perfect place to end today's conversation, because when we talk about our core values, it's not just our professional work. It's how does our professional work align with our personal goals
Right.
and our personal values? Like, no, I want to do this work. I want to do work that, feeds my soul.
Yeah.
But also my goal is to go back to China with my wife and her family. And like, so how does it lead to that? And
Yeah.
honestly, like, people neglect that a lot because their goal is to be successful in whatever their field is. And it's not like, yeah, but what does a happy life, do you know the financial expert Ramit Sethi?
No.
Are you familiar with him? Well, he's kind of like the antithesis, or his stance is to the classic financial advice. But one of his kind of existential questions is, what does rich life look like for you? Because some of his
Mm,
clients, like, they want to travel the country in an RV and they wanted to retire early so they could do that, right?
yeah.
So how do
Yeah.
they structure their financial planning to reach that goal? And for other people, it's like, no, I want, $1 billion or whatever. But it's like, what does it mean? It means something different for all of us to be, the rich life is what he called it. I think it's the same thing here. So I think that is an excellent final point to make, is that your professional work should absolutely be aligned with what you want out of life.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple when I say that out loud, that we all should get it, but boy, most of us don't. So
Yeah. You definitely can't have it all. I mean, it's so
no,
cliche, but that's been the thing I've been really reflecting on a lot this past year is, when I was younger, I would always, the grass was always greener. I would want to have this, I
totally.
would want to have everything. But as I'm getting older, I'm recognizing that there's certain sacrifices that I'm not willing to make. And in my life, a lot of it comes down to my marriage. It's
Yeah,
like I have
heck
this other
yeah.
person in my life. I was single when I had all that success, quote unquote, in my 20s. I'm married now. It's a completely different game. And if I'm engaged in that kind of wild freelance life for me and my values, my marriage is absolutely going to take a back seat, 150%. And so right now, it's like I can't have my cake and eat it too.
No.
I need to be grateful for what I have and make little films here and there when I can, but it can't be my full-time career right now.
Mhm.
Maybe in a few years.
In another
But
season, right?
yeah, another
In
season. But
another
right
season.
now, it's like that's what needs the attention, is like the foundation of this new. It's not new. I mean, we've been married for
Yeah.
almost 7 years, but like in many ways, she's a Chinese immigrant. She's in another country. We're trying to figure out how to navigate life over there and over here, and it's not easy. And if I'm
No.
traveling and away all the time, it's definitely not easy.
Yeah, buddy.
So It's yeah, ongoing journey.
Isn't it? That's the point right there.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you for being here, and also thank you for creating what you did. I mean, what a valuable resource for all of us. So I'm very grateful and very appreciative.
Of course. Yeah, thanks for having me, Ray.
And when you come down this way, or if I make it up to Maryland, let's get in touch before you leave to China.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks, brother. See you soon.
All right, Rain.
My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.